All right, 2 Kings chapter 4, let's call this one Ninja, because there's an interesting story from my time in college that I think sums up this chapter that talks about Elisha and his ability to help. Three different sets of folks in this chapter. Two sets of women, one a widow and the other one who seems to be an older married woman. And in the last story, he's going to help the sons of the prophets, which ties back into the first story because the widow is the widow of one of the sons of the prophets who is now in debt, and her two sons are at risk of being taken by their creditors because in this period of Israel's history, debt servitude was a way that they could satisfy unpaid debts, and that's exactly what she had. And so when she comes to Elisha, after asking, "What can I do for you?" he's going to ask her, "What do you have?" Because she is going to say, "All I have in the house is a little bit of oil." He's going to tell her, "Go borrow some pots because you're going to need them." All of the containers that she can borrow from her neighbors, she is going to need to fill with the oil that's not going to run out in her house until the containers that she's borrowed run out. And he is going to say, "Good, now that you have all that oil, sell it. Not only are you going to be able to pay off your debts, you're going to be able to live off of the excess." And so he is next going to find himself actually being the beneficiary of some hospitality and some kindness when a Shunammite woman and her husband are going to have a room prepared for them at her house for them to actually stay at during their travels, which is going to prompt them to say, well, what kind of kindness can we show to her since she's been so kind to us? And Gehazi is going to say, well, her husband is old and she has no child. What do you think? Which is going to prompt Elijah to call the woman in to say, you're going to have a kid, which is in turn going to prompt her to say, please don't, because she doesn't want to get her hopes up only to be disappointed. And she's not going to be disappointed because she is going to have a kid, but she is going to be disappointed when that child dies. As this widow goes to find Elisha, she's basically going to keep her grief to herself. And this is a point that we have emphasized before, understanding that in her example, we get to see someone who under tremendous grief holds it together long enough to continue seeking out solutions. So she doesn't even tell her husband what's happened to the son. She simply has someone get the transportation ready so that she can get to Elijah to make sure that this thing isn't final, and it's not. And so he's going to actually make it to the boy, and he is going to revive him once again, like Elijah, taking what seems to be a cruel turn of events and actually turning them into relief. Understanding that at the end of the chapter, we're going to see him back in the company of the sons of the prophets, and understanding that this is a time of famine, he is going to tell his servant to put a pot on for them. And as one of them is gathering some extra herbs for the stew, they're going to throw some in that are actually going to seem to be poisonous. And so as they're eating, they're going to say, "Oh, man of God, there is death in the pot." At which point he is going to tell someone to bring him some flour. Seems like Elijah is going to be the one to take the flour and throw it into the pot, at which point he's going to say, "Keep eating." And all is going to be well. Understanding that story reminded me of a story back from college when I got to see one of the guys on the football team arguing with one of the guys on the rugby team. The guy on the rugby team basically giving them grief for having to wear pads in their contact sport, to which the guy on the football team responded that, look, to any ordinary fool, hands and feet are for walking, but to a ninja, they're weapons. So everybody got to have a good roll on the floor laughing moment at that response. But it reminded me that we are looking at Elisha, a man who has already healed the waters of Jericho by simply taking some salt and throwing salt into the tainted waters. Now we're looking at Elisha possibly being the one who's taken just some flour and throwing it into a poison pot of food. Later on, we're going to see a young man who is trying to build a residence for the sons of the prophets lose an axe head. And once again, Elisha is going to step in, this time taking nothing more than a stick and throwing it into the part of the waters where the axe head fell, which is going to prompt the axe head to float, which reminded me of that period in Joseph's life where no matter how low he got, whether he was sold into slavery by his brothers or then locked up in the prison, it seemed that everything he touched was blessed. And then likewise, David, who was blessed everywhere he went in battle, reminded me of what my friend said. To any normal person, it's just salt, flour, and a stick. But to a man who's living at his potential with God, everything he was doing was blessed. For him, it took the shape of miracles. For David, Jacob, and Joseph, it was simply God blessing everything they would do, because each of these men were committed to being legitimate blessings to the people around them.